for strikeouts in a game. 20.
Swung on and driven to deep left. It is high. Number 8. Yankees win. Yankees win. Bernie Williams homers deep in the left field seat to lead off the 11th inning on a 1-run finish. And the Yankees beat the Orioles 5-4 to win Game 1 of the American League Championship Series. Burn, baby, burn. He's done it again.
Deep left. There it goes. Soaring into history. He's done it. He has done it. 62. Aaron Judge is the American League single-season home run leader. The AL King. Case closed.
What is going on, baseball fans? We are here. We are back. Dave and I'm Jeremy Laracuente, and this is the Baseball Banter Broadcast. And as you saw in the open there, we are continuing our series on the state of the franchise from championship years to rebuilding years. Every team has a story. And today, the team we are discussing with our friend Chris Ross is the Boston Red Sox. What's going on, Chris?
Good.
All right. So as we begin this series, we like to kind of take a little bit of a retrospective and kind of get your gut reaction on the 2024 season for Boston. So kind of what were your thoughts on last year before we get into the new upcoming season?
Yeah, the season was good. It wasn't what we liked. That we haven't made the playoffs in the last 3 years, but 81 and 81, we had a solid first half of the season. Kind of lost gas in the back end of the season. Some injuries took away from that. So, obviously we would have liked to get a few more wins, make the playoffs, but some errors, some blown saves counted for, some misses there. I don't think everyone had expectations that the team was going to, put it together last year, but it was a solid first half. And then the second half just kind of, like I said, with the injuries and losing gas, just kind of fizzled out.
Not for sure. Definitely not the kind of season that Boston fans have come used to expect. Now, as we kind of transition and look forward to this upcoming season, Boston has been one of the more active teams this season, kind of adding pieces, most recently with Alex Bregman, but you brought in, Garrett Crochet, a trade, Walker Buehler, Aroldis Chapman, Justin Wilson, and even more recently, a couple of minor league signings with a guy like Adam Ottavino. Of the moves that were made, what do you think is going to be the most impactful, and what's kind of the most underrated move?
Yeah, going into the season, they said they wanted to get a few things accomplished. They wanted to even out the lineup with a right-handed hitter. They wanted to get the bullpen squared away. So the acquisitions, obviously, right away, they did the Garrett Crochet trade, which was good. Gave away a few big prospects in that trade, which was able to get the deal done. So obviously, that's going to be a big part to get a frontline guy to go in the top of the rotation. We already had an all-star in the first half in Tanner Houck, who is going to be a good 1-2 punch for the rotation. Added Walker Buehler. Hopefully he could have a good season. He didn't really put it together in the regular season, but had a obviously solid World Series, which brought him over here. So, if he could get it together, you got Giolito coming back from an injury, and then Brian Bello and Cutter Crawford. So kind of deep there with some injuries are going to take place, but, some guys that coming up. Aroldis Chapman at the back of the bullpen, give us a little bit of depth because Liam Hendricks is coming back from an injury. So hopefully he can, gain the closer job and give us some depth there. Like you said, Justin Wilson, Garrett Whitlock's coming back from an injury and probably going back to the bullpen. So he'll give us some depth there. So I think the pitching will be good. I would have liked another trade. It still could happen. It's the spring training. Injuries will happen. People will need to make adjustments to going into opening day. I know Dylan Cease gets talked about a lot, thrown around. So, you add him to the front end, and you get Cease, Crochet, Houck, Buell. That could be a solid rotation. Underrated move for acquisitions. Again, some of the guys like the catching depth could help because catching's not our strongest point. Kanawang is good, but we added Carlos Narvaez with the trade. Blake Sable, Sebi Zavala to give us some catching depth. So, underrated just to give us depth, platoon-wise, left-handed, right-handed, up against, different splits. Those guys should help out a lot, framing the pitchers. Like I said, you got Crochet's new, Bueller's new, Giolito's going to be new. He hasn't pitched for us yet, so Hendricks again. So a lot of these guys coming off injuries, the catchers are going to need to, do a good job handling them.
Well, we got a disgruntled number 6 pitcher if you want him. So
yeah, I see Stroman getting thrown around a lot. The trades. People keep talking about him for Arenado. I don't particularly know that's going to work out for anyone, but trying to get rid of contracts on both sides, and for guys that are either declining or just not having a spot isn't really working out for either team.
No,
the Bregman trade though, signing free agency is going to be big. Hopefully that all works out. I know there's been a lot of talk lately about Devers not wanting to move off third. Bregman would obviously help on the defensive end of that, playing third base if Devers would go to DH or first base. We got Tristan Casas. So the good thing is we have a lot of depth as far as players, but maybe not a lot of positions on where to put them, especially with the prospects coming up. Christian Campbell, Roman Anthony, Marcelo Mea, they're all going to need spots eventually. Story's playing short. He's got to opt in at the end of the year. Now Bregman, if he plays second, displaces Campbell. Maybe he has to go to the outfield, but we have Rafaela, who just got an extension, and Abreu, who just won a Gold Glove, and obviously Jared Duran was an All-Star, Jaron Duran. So, a lot of players, not a lot of places to put them. So, like I said, maybe something happens between now and opening day, but it's never a bad thing to have too many players.
Yes and no. Just depends. Like last year, we had just too many outfielders for the Yankees. And it was just like, all right, who's playing where? So let's get into impactful injuries. You had Yoshida with the shoulder, Cutter Crawford, Patrick Sandoval's coming over from the Angels with an elbow strain, Liam Hendricks, UCL, Garrett Whitlock, UCL, Chris Murphy, UCL. Giolito, I thought was the epitome of bad luck, right? Throws one pitch and blows his arm out.
Right.
Spending $39 million, and then you got Marcelo Meyer with the back. So let me ask you this: out of that list, who do you think is going to have a quicker recovery time and make more of an impact this year and not have a recurring injury? Who do you think is going to be 100%?
Well, obviously, like I said, Walker Buehler came back from his surgery last year and pitched and didn't have a great regular season. So hopefully in his second year back from injury, he can put it together. Giolito obviously is on the back end of the rotation right now. Cutter Crawford has a knee issue he's dealing with. So like I said, it's good to have depth. Brian Bello, I think, was day-to-day recently with a shoulder soreness. So, out of those two guys, to have Giolito be able to spot in, and then guys like Priester, Criswell, Fitz, those guys could slot at any point. So right away, for the rotation-wise, obviously you want Giolito to be able to take some innings. We didn't have a lot of guys go a lot of innings last year. I think Hawk was up there, Brian Bello. Crawford, like I said, who's dealing with the knee soreness, was part of the innings guys. So to be able to have somebody to fit in and take some innings is going to be good. Like you said, with the lineup as well. You have Devers dealt with some shoulder issues. Yoshida, obviously, Trevor Story, you'd like to see stay healthy. He could be huge for us if he could get a full year. Obviously, he has the opt-in, like I said. So if he puts in a good year, and I don't think he's going anywhere anyway, but obviously you'd like to get a full year out of him. Garrett Whitlock, if he is able to stay healthy and not, take a step back, it will give us some long relief in the bullpen. And then Liam Hendricks needs to stay healthy so that we have a solid ninth inning guy.
Yeah, totally agree.
But Sandoval's not due back until like the second half of the season anyway. So if people start to lose gas towards the end, we'll have a guy that we can hopefully pick up the slack for the guys that are struggling maybe after the All-Star break.
Gotcha. And I will give the Red Sox a little bit of credit. Like, they just kept dealing with injury after injury after injury, and it just seemed like no matter who they pulled up from Worcester, it just seems like they were able just to plug a hole and do it fairly well. So I think if it wasn't for all the injuries you guys sustained last year, you guys at least make the second wild card.
Like I said, there's a lot of depth. We ended up, like I said, 81 and 81, but it's good that we have guys that can step in, hopefully guys like Grissom, Hamilton, and Ref Snyder. Like I said, if you're going to have to go lefty versus righties, these guys can, take days and matchups. So it's always good to have somebody to throw in.
Yeah. So let's get to the X factor for 2025. Obviously, Tristan Cassis is your everyday first baseman, but you guys had the substitute Roman Gonzalez for him last year due to injury. The Red Sox have struggled with consistency at that position since the departure of Adrian Gonzalez in that massive trade. The Red Sox will have to look to some sort of average above play from their everyday first baseman despite off-season rumors of his availability in trade talks. Tristan Cassis and, the Red Sox need to have a big season. So that's our X factor. Who's yours?
Yeah, well, like I said, obviously you want him to stay healthy as well because he has a lot of power in the middle of the lineup that you can expect good things from. We don't really have great depth at first base as opposed to the other positions. Like you said, Roman Gonzalez, and then maybe even when we're talking about switching Devers to either first or DH, you can get production there and then switch over Bregman to third. And, if Christian Campbell's ready to break camp, he could play second. Like I said, one of the X factors for me is where Devers is going to play. How the season is going to wind out, whether he's going to be willing to switch off at third base, because obviously Bregman's the better defensive third baseman. You don't want to dispel your star player if he's going to be unhappy, but it'll definitely make move for Christian Campbell to play his regular position, Bregman to play his regular position. If Story goes down with an injury, Meyer or somebody else, Rafael played a bunch of infield positions last year. He could be a super utility guy. And then, if Roman Anthony comes up, he could go into the outfield. So there's positions and depth everywhere. I don't know who's going to break camp opening day and where they're going to fit, but obviously you don't want a lot of moving parts and dysfunction when it comes to what everyone's doing on a day-to-day basis. I think Andrew Bailey as the pitching coach could be another big X factor, like I said, dealing with injuries, pitchers coming back from Tommy John surgery, internal brace repair, haven't pitched in a while, getting the younger guys squared away and going is going to be a big thing for them. And then it's just like I said, cutting down on injuries, getting the bullpen to go deeper and better into, the year is going to be a big deal, and getting those couple extra wins to get, from an 81 team to, the front office wanted 90 to 95 wins. But, realistically, you get to the 87, 88 range, you're probably making the playoffs anyway. So.
One more thing before I throw it back over to Jeremy. Let me ask you about this Devers thing, because this just has me my head just spinning, because it kind of pisses me off a little bit for guys not to do what's needed for the betterment of the team, I guess kind of goes right through me. I kind of take it as not being a team player. Like, what do you think about this? Is it because of the money he's getting paid? Is it a pride thing? Like, why is this kid not willing to do what's needed for the betterment of this team? Like, you just signed Alex Bregman. Like, that should be a key indicator of, like, okay, like, he's not getting any younger. Devers isn't getting any younger. So, yeah, he's going to end up eventually being a first baseman or a DH because his body's just not going to be able to tolerate playing that demanding position of third base anymore. So what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of everything. You said pride thing, or if it's, I hear a lot of people talking about, well, he got paid, he should just move over and play DH. And, these guys are athletes, they're competitive, they came up playing the game, they want to play the game. If I came up playing a position and I enjoy playing the game, then I want to be on the field with my teammates. I don't want to be just waiting for my at-bat, to come around and just get those 4 or 5 at-bats every game. And contribute that way. Some people will do it. Some people like the game and being competitive. So it is a pride thing. He's only 28 years old. So he's been in the league, like 6 years, and he's got a 10-year contract that he's into. So he's got quite a few more years left. And to just go to the bench and DH is, probably a pride thing. He wants to work on his craft. He does, he's obviously the metrics show that he's not the best defensive third baseman since he's been in the league, but he does take pride in working on it and trying to get it to be a position where he does better. Unfortunately, you signed a guy who is a better defensive third baseman. He's a Gold Glover, and when they talked about signing him to play second, then you figure, all right, I'm still going to get to play third, and now it's all the talk about, well, would you move off third, for somebody else? And he's like, no, I want to play my position.
Yeah, I think it's interesting when you think about, just kind of the contrast, right, between our two teams. So with Aaron Judge kind of being displaced out of his Gold Glove caliber right field position to be a less, than league average at best center fielder, because we had Juan Soto right field last year, and he was making that move where, and we've seen it not just with, Rafael Devers this year, but with our own team, Gleyber Torres, last year, acquiring Jazz Chisholm Jr. to play second base, a position that he's better suited for, and moving Gleyber to third, a position that he played in the minor leagues for the Yankees and for the Cubs when they first acquired him, but being unwilling to make those moves for the betterment of the team, it is something that is, to me, kind of becoming more rampant in the game nowadays. And it's, it kind of shows who, like Dave was saying, is kind of a team player, team leader. I think about Nolan Arenado when the talks trades were going out, him saying he was willing to play first base. This is, one of the greatest defensive third basemen in the history of the game, willing to move positions to play for a winner. Those kind of intangibles you can't really quantify. So it's going to be interesting to see how things kind of shake out for Boston with this Devers situation for sure, especially, again, having a player in Devers that is, one of the worst defensive third baseman in the league, and having Bregman, who's amongst the upper echelon at that particular position. So definitely very interesting. Now, one of the other things that I wanted to jump into, you mentioned a couple of the prospects that the Red Sox have, and they have one of the best farm systems in baseball right now. You mentioned the depth a couple of times. The MLB.com's #1 prospect for Boston right now is Roman Anthony. What can you kind of tell us about him, and when do you think he makes his debut with the club for the for Boston?
Yeah, they definitely. I think they were ranked either #1 or close to the top in farm systems this year going into the season. Roman Anthony, like I said, Christian Campbell, Marcelo Mayer, they're all top 100 prospects. I think Franklin Arias is even listed as a top 100 prospect going in. Roman Anthony's a stud. He's hits for power. I think his slash line was like 291, 403, 466, and he had like a 982 OPS in 35 games in AAA. 18 home runs. So, some of these guys, they don't have the speed necessarily, but they do have the glove. the power, when they mature into their, they're still young guys. So when they mature into their physical shapes, obviously some of that speed again will probably get less, but the power will be there. Christian Campbell, I think, probably has the best chance of breaking camp opening day, just because of his performance in the minor leagues. I think he was Baseball America's minor league player of the year last season. He slashed like 330, 439, 558, 20 home runs. So, he's a guy that you could put in second base, obviously, depending on the Bregman-Devers situation. He could play outfield. But again, like I said, you got Wilyer Abreu and Cedar Rafael out there as well. And there's a lot of depth. Like, even if you get past the top three guys, it's funny, I put together a lineup recently where it was basically just the young guys. You had Connor Wong at catcher, Casas at first. You could put Christian Campbell at second, Cedar Rafael at shortstop, Marcelo Meyer at third base, Jaron Duran in left, and then Abreu, and these guys, and you could fill out the whole. And even before, they could have had Teal before the Crochet deal, so you could have literally filled out the entire 1 through 9 with these young kids, and a lot of these guys are going to be starting, this year, and then some of the other guys might be brought up this year. But I think, you even had Tristan Casas when he was talking about the Devers thing, saying that he doesn't think any of the prospects should start opening day. They should probably start out in the minors. It's going to depend on how they play in spring training. Like I said, the injuries are going to happen. If they play their way in, they should be on the roster. If the coaches, Alex Cora decides, they need some more time in AAA, then, they haven't had many at-bats through there to begin with because they came up through the farm system so quickly. So if they decide they need more time, then they'll get more time and they'll come up, maybe early May or June.
So you mentioned one of the young guys' potential for Boston, and that kind of leads me to my bold prediction. I believe that Marcelo Meyer will take over an everyday starting job at shortstop by May. That's kind of my bold prediction for Boston this year. What do you believe is a bold prediction for Boston in 2025?
Bold prediction. The fun thing for me as the Red Sox fan over the last, decade or so is they finished last just about as much as they finished at the top of the division. So going from, let's say, worst to first, even last year where they went 81 and 81. So my bold prediction, considering the Yankees went to the World Series last year, is that they're going to win the AL East. If they could have a healthy season from a lot of guys, if Casas stays healthy, if Story stays healthy, obviously the prospects won't come up. That's just a bold prediction. Like, I don't, towards the end, we'll get around to it. I think they'll probably finish more towards third or second. Like I said, if they could get the 86, 87 wins, make the playoffs, that's fine for me. Bold prediction, though, the Orioles lost a few players. Santander, Corbin Burns left. The Blue Jays got Santander, Max Scherzer, Jimenez. They got a few guys, so they might take a step forward. The Yankees lost Soto, but they had a good offseason getting Bellinger and Goldsmith and Devin Williams, and they're going to be fine. They got Max Fried and Cole and Rodon and Heel and Schmidt and all these guys. Their rotation's good. They're professionals. They're going to get it done. Even with the question marks about DJ LeMahieu or Stroman or Jazz Chisholm and where they're going to play and who's going to be third base and if they make another move, the Yankees are going to be fine. So bold prediction, that's why it's called bold. I'll give them the AL East as a bold prediction. The prospects, maybe Christian Campbell breaks with the camp opening day. So, he could play shortstop, second base, outfield. So the fact that he could play other positions, depending on if something happens and then he hits well during spring training, then he can, be on the roster opening day. But there's so much depth. You still got guys like Grissom, who ended the year on the team, David Hamilton, Gonzalez, and, Ref Snyder and, all the pitchers you got to play. So the bench spots are limited, but they should be fine.
For sure. For
A
sure.
lot of space.
Well, like I said, it's a bold prediction. So
I know. I'm just
gotta
messing
go
with
big.
you.
But like I said, realistically, you hope for they went 81 and 81. They played better at home this year. I think they had like a 5-game under losing record at home last year. You switch that around, get them 5 in the win column, get them to 86. You added Crochet, you get some better pitching. I mean, they had some all-stars last year in Duran and Houck, and Crochet was an all-star for, the White Sox, and Devers obviously is always there. So you got guys that can play, and the main thing is staying healthy. Like I said, if you get a healthy Story, a healthy Casas, even if Yoshida, DHs and is healthy and can hit, there's a lot of production you can get from these guys if they're healthy. If they're not healthy, then it goes the other way. It's floor ceiling. You never know which way it's going to go.
The only reason why I say that is because I get a lot of crap because my mom's entire side of the family, they're all Red Sox fans with me, and they constantly tell me every year how bad my team sucks. And it's like, oh, that's interesting considering you guys were a 500 team and we went to the World Series and lost. So
not even. I don't think the
Yankees
haven't had a losing season in like 30 years. So it's like the Red Sox, like I said, finished last place about more than I think they finished 60% of the time in the last 10 years in last place as opposed to first or second or third or whatever.
Right.
But for a team that hasn't had a losing record in like 30 years, talking about how they're going to be, it's optimism, but you got to realistically see how the season plays out. It's 162 games. It's a long season. That's why, even with everyone talking about the Dodgers and, how they're just going to run away with it and they just keep adding everybody, they can only win the NL West. You still got to win the East, the Central.
Right.
You got everyone in the AL's got to win their divisions and make the wild card and all those spots. So, they can only win one spot to get into playoffs, and then you just got to beat them when you get there.
100%. So that kind of leads me then into what do you believe is the biggest question for Boston going into the season?
Yeah, like I said, health. If they could stay healthy, they could be a great team. That's a question mark for most teams going into the season. I know some of the smaller market teams have some open spots where they don't have as much depth and they don't sign players. So going into it, that maybe they're not going to be great. But we have a good team. We just need to stay healthy. The pitching staff, like you said, there's a lot of guys coming back from Tommy John, internal brace surgery, dealing with shoulder issues. So the biggest question mark is, can they stay healthy?
For sure. So then that kind of transitions. That kind of transitions then, what's the biggest frustration? Is it the fact that they haven't been able to stay healthy?
No, I think the biggest frustration for me is the front office. During the off seasons and the trade deadlines, they say they're going to go for it, or they, going to sign a lot of players, or they're going to, spend a lot of money, and they just don't. They made the Garrett Crochet trade, but then they made some smaller things. Like I said, Walker Buehler coming off of his down year is a 1-year contract. Giolito's had his surgery. Sandoval's has his surgery. They signed Giovanni Moran had surgery. All these guys coming off these injuries that they're kind of low risk, high reward guys. But then it wasn't until February that they got Alex Bregman. So like in between, they could have done things to address the bullpen better. They could have done things to get that right-handed bat. I know Arenado was a trade talk for like most of the offseason, but they were waiting for Bregman to see what he did. I kind of want to see them make another move and go for it, another Crochet type trade. There is a lot of depth, like I said, with the farm system and the regular roster, and there's a lot of teams that need, outfielders. Pittsburgh could use some outfielders. If Seattle has pitching, that they could use some position players. If San Diego really is going to get rid of Cease or King, there's something there. So, going out there and making the move and going for it. Hopefully at the deadline, if they're in it, they do take that step forward and actually really go hard to try to win the division or make it to the playoffs and, build a team that could beat a team like the Dodgers or the Yankees or the Astros or whoever's in the playoffs, the Mets, Braves, when it finally comes around time, because they have good players, but they need more.
Well, then someone needs to tell your owner to stop buying hockey teams, football teams, racing teams, and trying to buy my Boston Celtics.
Yeah,
so enough. And then he goes and buys the Pittsburgh Penguins and then complains like he's broke and can't pay players. Well, stop buying other shit.
Yeah.
It's that simple.
Well, that's one of the things you kind of want them to get back to where it was in 2003 going into 2004. Like they had that hunger to beat the Yankees back then because they hadn't won in 86 years. But then, they've won 4 in 20. So, they've won the most World Series in the last 20 years than any team since. So maybe that hunger died out a little bit. And maybe they're, happy going in with the young guys and not spending as much money. But you like to see that hunger again where they kind of go after it. You know what I mean? Like, go get Dylan Cease, put him at the top of the rotation. Go get another bullpen guy, see if the Cardinals will trade Helsley. I mean, he's going into the last year of his contract. Get a solid guy for the back end of the rotation. Get whoever you can. Somebody that can, take over for Casas if he gets injured, at first base, get some depth there. So you don't have to worry about just moving Devers if, there's moving parts, but like the farm system.
You talk about the hunger to win. I'm convinced that was all Theo Epstein and Dave Dombrowski. I think that's where that came from. And especially like the players on the field, like especially in 2004, coming off of that brutal loss to the Yankees with Boone smashing that home run off Wakefield to end it, and the way that the year we won't speak about ended. I think that's really where that drive came from, was those two GMs that brought championships to the city of Boston.
Yeah, well, it was also like a different time, just coming off, Moneyball and John Henry buying the team, and they signed Bill James, to help out with the sabermetrics aspect of it. And, from that point on, I think people, maybe don't realize that Bill James left as an advisor in like 2019 or something like that. And since 2018, when they traded Betts and started dismantling some of that team, other than 2021, they haven't been, back to the playoffs or finished last a lot of the time. So, they got to get back to understanding where they want the direction of the team to go, having that drive to win, which is what they talked about, the beginning of this offseason, how they were going to go after it and spend money. And, now that they're over the CBT, how they'll stay over it. And, hopefully they make the moves to put it into gear.
Hopefully, for your sake, not really for ours, but
well, the rivalry is always there, and it's always good to watch, good baseball between the Yankees.
It's not the same as what it used to be 20 years ago, man.
Like I said, you guys are always there. You make the playoffs. You haven't had a losing season in a long time. We've been down as much as we've been up. I've said that a few times. So, back even in the, early 2000s stuff, even though we weren't, let's say, winning championships, we were there, and it was a rivalry, and it was fierce, and now it seems to have gotten to the point where it's like, all right, ship off Mookie Betts to the Dodgers, and all these, you don't have most of. I think Rafael Devers is the only player left from like the 2018 World Series that's still there. So, when you don't have the same guys on the same team going at it every year, it's hard to really get a rivalry built up when you're facing different players every year.
Totally.
For sure. So let's just kind of jump into the team itself and see what do you believe is the offensive grade that you would give for Boston heading into 2025?
For the offense, I'd say it's a solid B. like I said, you had a few All-Stars. Jaron Duran's going to hopefully have another solid season. Devers always hits, if nothing else. If you get, solid efforts out of most of the guys, like I said, Story, Casas, Yoshida, stay healthy and they produce, that's going to be good. There's like 3 different tiers to the hitting. You got Devers, Bregman, and Duran. Then you got, like I said, Story, Casas, and Yoshida. You got to stay healthy. And then you guys like Abreu, Rafaela, who are glove first. Connor Wong hopefully takes a step forward with the defense, but he's a guy that can give you average production. So I think like a solid B. Plus, like I said, the depth is there. So if a guy does go down, you have players that can come up, or you have the prospects that could take a step forward and fill in spots. So I think that the offenses, they usually put up runs. So I'm not concerned so much with the offense.
Yeah, and kind of, preparation for this series, I had it at a B minus. So I think that, while there is a ton of depth for Boston right now, especially with the minor leagues, how much of it is really going to be a big impact is really the question, especially, there is a lot of strength to the American League East, some moves that you mentioned earlier. Boston is one of those teams that kind of is in that middle ground right now. Like you said, last year, 500 team. And even though Baltimore made moves, Boston made moves, Tampa, is kind of influx, but Toronto's made moves. So, how much of that depth is really going to be of impact for Boston? So that's kind of where I had it at a B minus, but more or less the same grade as you. Now, when it comes to the pitching side of things, how would you grade out the pitching?
So I have that more towards where you had it. I have it at a B minus. Obviously, like I love the addition of Crochet. I'm higher on Tanner Hawk, I think, than most people are. I think he gets slept on a lot. He had like a 3.12 ERA last year. He was one of the better pitchers. He gave you innings. He's not necessarily the sexy strikeout guy that's going to give you 200 plus strikeouts, but he's got nasty stuff. And if he can, people forget too that he was stretched out of the bullpen, and then he was only supposed to be like maybe a middle to back end kind of pitcher, and now he was like the number 1 pitcher on the team last year. And then he'll go 1-2 with Crochet. Again, concerns about injuries. Cutter Crawford already is dealing with a knee. You got to see how Bueller pitches this year. Giolito, Brian Bello, you hope can take a step forward. And then the bullpen is a concern as well. You got guys like Whitlock and Hendricks that you don't know what you're going to get. Aldis Chapman is up and down. You guys should know how he pitches.
100%.
They got him from Pittsburgh, and he kind of took over a little bit towards the end of that season last year with them. But he's a hard thrower, and you hope that he can miss more bats than hit. So, I say it's B minus. I'd like to add another pitcher, like I said, and maybe bring it up. But because there's so much room to add, I can't give it much higher than that.
Yeah, I agree. When looking at this team, again, the depth to me is a big factor for that grading. But just like the offense to me is how much of it is really going to impact the everyday major league club for 2025. One of the things that I do think that Boston did well this all season in comparison to the last few is kind of getting that depth later in the season. Having these guys that are coming back from, Tommy John and the, brace surgeries and stuff like that is kind of prepping for the second half, where over the past couple of seasons, that's kind of where Boston has, kind of lost their footing in terms of, the divisional battle and the wild card battle has been in the second half where, their pitching staff has kind of been, worn out. So that they did a good job of kind of prepping for the second half almost with some of their acquisitions that they made. But it'll be interesting to see exactly how that kind of shakes out for them. Now, what were you gonna say?
I was going to say, I agree. Like I said, there's at the trade deadline, there's been times where I really wanted them to make another addition so that, they could give some guys a breather or, get something to add on at the end to get them over that hump, and they just didn't. There's small moves, but nothing impactful that was really going to get them there. And like you said, they ended up not having the energy towards the second half to get them there.
Yeah, it's always the last couple of trading deadlines for me. Looking at the moves that Boston has made, it's been a question of which direction are they going. Like you said, making some smaller moves, but nothing of real impact of promise for the future. Even whether it was making a decision to trade away an asset and get prospects for the future, or trading prospects to get something that was going to help in the present. And they've kind of just been in that weird, no man's land in the middle. So, like I said, being able to kind of prep ahead of time, I think was a good move for them. But we'll have to wait and see exactly how that all plays out.
Yeah, definitely.
Now, as we, as you alluded to earlier in the conversation about where Boston will finish, the projections have you guys finishing between third and second. Pacoda has Boston finishing third at 81 and 81, but Fangraphs has you at second with an 84 and 87 record. So where did you believe Boston will truly end up in the divisional battle, and what does that win total look like?
Yeah, I don't take much faith in those projections. They're hit or miss, and they always have a variance of, a certain amount of wins and losses. 81 and 81 is where we finished last year, so it's hard to think that we're going to stay there with the additions that we made. Crochet and Bregman especially should give us a few more wins in that total. Like I said, if we cut down on the errors and the bullpen steps up, that should give us a good footing. Like I said, I think 86, 87 wins would be a good spot for us to finish the season. I'd obviously like to finish higher, and then the trade deadline will figure out where we are, and if we take that step forward, health's going to be a big concern, like I keep saying. So, but that's any team. But like I said, it's hard to imagine that we're going to be worse off than we were last year or stay the same, considering the additions that we made to the team. So I think you add 5 more wins, we play better at home. Bregman obviously hits well at Fenway, according to his stats. So if he could get us some good at-bats and, we cut back down on the errors, win the games we should win and the close games, then I don't see any reason that we can't get to 86, 87 and finish second in the division.
Yeah, so I'm a little higher than you on Boston's kind of win total. I think that they're going to come in at about 88. I think that with what happened with Tampa and their kind of, retooling of everything, I think they're not going to be as competitive as they have been the last few years. So I think that's going to allow the rest of the teams in the AL East to kind of get a couple extra wins that they probably wouldn't have gotten over the past couple of seasons. But I agree. I think that, the level of depth that they've built up with the additions that they've made to kind of fortify for the second half, I think is going to be helpful. I think Bregman is going to be a big deal in that lineup, helping kind of balance out the lefty heavy nature of the Red Sox order right now. Plus, in that ballpark, he has been a monster. So I think that for Boston, I think they finish in second in the division. I think they're going to make a wild card spot. I think it's probably going to be closer to 87, 88 wins to get there. But yeah, I definitely agree. I think that they're in a much better spot than where they are projected to be in terms of Pacoda and Fangraphs, though. As we kind of bring it to a close here, using the nature and the title of this series, what do you believe the state of the franchise is for Boston heading into the 2025 campaign?
Yeah, I think it's a good outlook. Obviously we haven't made the playoffs in the last 3 years, so considering that we're sitting here talking about them getting back into it, it's a good look. The prospects coming up, there's obviously a future having a solid farm system. The acquisitions that we made to trade for Crochet, I'd like to see them make, some extensions to some of these guys, so we don't have to worry about, like, Garrett Crochet's only got 2 years. You'd like to see him get extended. Some of the younger guys, you'd like to see them get extended. Bueller's only here on like a 1 year with an option. I think there's something they had in their contract for another year. Giolito's signed for 2 years, but he didn't play last year, so this is his year. Same thing with Sandoval. You get maybe like a year and a half out of him. So some of these guys will be off the books. Some of these younger guys you'd like to see maybe, get extended going into the season. Maybe not necessarily the prospects until you see where they produce, but, you'd like to get at least something to say, we're going to have these guys. We like them here for a while. Like I said, especially with a guy like Garrett Crochet, you didn't give up those prospects and make the moves to just have 2 years of him. So, you want to get something done. Bregman, like I said, with the length of his contract and the amount, I don't see him opting out and giving up $4 million a year. Even if he puts up a big year, it's going to be, does he want to be test free agency or does he really want to play here? Same thing with Story. I think his is like $25 million. I don't see him giving up another 25 for the next 2 years. I think he's got an option for each year. So they'll be here, and that'll give us, like, the short-term contract for Bregman was what they were looking for, so that when Roman Anthony, Christian Campbell, Marcelo Mayer all come up, they're able to fit into the lineup in the future. So this way, if these guys are gone, they'll slate right in. You got Devers on his long contract. So I'd like to see them lock up a few guys. I'd like to see them, be the Red Sox, start spending, start making the big splash, whether it's a trade or, a free agent, get another guy, be the Red Sox, compete. You just had the Yankees in the World Series, like, go out there and try to beat them again, get that fire back. But as far as the state of the franchise, I think they're in a good position. Depth, farm, pitching, hitting, it's all lining up, and they'll be good again.
Definitely going to be an interesting year for the Boston Red Sox and for the battle between the Yankees and the Red Sox. But Chris, we want to thank you for joining us. This has been a fun conversation. Obviously, as the rivalry heats up, we definitely have to get you back on to kind of roast one team or the other, depending on which way it's going.
Yeah, well, hopefully one of us has more wins than the other, but I appreciate it. Yeah, definitely good talk, and we'll see how the season goes.
Absolutely. So before we go, definitely want to make sure that everyone follows you. So let everybody know where they can find you for more of your thoughts on the Boston Red Sox.
Yeah, so I don't do a lot of interacting, but you can find me on Twitter, CRoss, BYC11 on Twitter. I just give my daily takes about the social media conversation going on. If I see trade rumors or people are giving discussions about what stupid comment Tristan Cass has said on that, whether he should have taken that question about Devers and, whatever. So I'll give my feedback, and but that's about it. That's the limit to my interactions.
And before we go, everybody go check out our merch store on Printify. The link will be in the show notes of this episode. We got hoodies, t-shirts, you name it, it's there. Jeremy's gotten into some creative stuff and has created some really gangster looking t-shirts and hoodies. So we won't ruin it, so go check it out. Like I said, it helps benefit the show. So get yourself some merch.
Yeah, do it.
Absolutely, guys. So once again, Chris, thanks for joining us, and thank you for tuning in here on YouTube. Make sure you hit that subscribe button down below, as well as the bell for post notifications. So each and every time we drop new content here, you are notified. If you're listening on the audio site, make sure you leave a 5-star rating and review wherever you're getting your podcast from, as it does help us continue to grow this community and rise up the algorithm. So once again, for Chris Ross, for Dave, and for myself, thank you for tuning in to the state of the Boston Red Sox for the 2025 season. And we'll catch you on the next one.
Thanks, Ed.